Hi everyone, this is Eric Rodewa, EPGD Attorneys at Law PA here in Miami, Florida, formerly of Coral Gables, but now we're about 30 feet away in our new office building at 777 Southwest 37th Avenue. It is National Small Business Week, so hopefully Talia posts this video at a time that is still National Small Business Week. And even if it's not, we work with small business owners all the time. So here is kind of a story and kind of like a very common experience we have with our clients. So these two young gentlemen, professionals, entrepreneurial minded, but still working for somebody else, they've teamed up and they want to start their own company. And so they come to me and they say, first of all, can you look at our existing non-compete agreements and our employment contracts with our old bosses to make sure that we're going to be okay doing what we're going to do now? So I take a look, they're fine. So now they're like, all right, Eric, what are the steps? I'm like, okay, what do you guys want to do? They're like, well, we want to sell stuff online. I'm like, okay, online retail. So obviously, we're going to need to create a company. We're going to need to do an agreement between the owners. If it's an LLC, we call that an operating agreement. If it's a corporation, we call that a shareholders agreement. But basically, it's the deal between the owners. And we're going to handle things like responsibility, titles, perhaps compensation, ownership interests, and anything else that comes up. And a lot of times, if we give it some forethought, we're going to think about things like, what happens if one of us gets divorced? What happens if one of us gets bankruptcy? What happens if one of us dies? I mean, these are uncomfortable things to think about, but trust me, it's better to have a plan in place than have no plan at all. So then I say we're going to need to set up a website. Now, obviously, I don't do that, but you're going to need a web platform because that's going to be your brick and mortar. That's going to be how you're going to make money, right? So the website is going to need terms and conditions, which is essentially your contract with everyone buying from you on your website. Terms and conditions, a privacy policy, maybe some disclaimers, okay? Then, of course, since there's a billion websites, we need some way of identifying you. So maybe we're going to want to create unique branding. Again, I don't create the branding, but you know what I do is I register the trademarks, okay? We register them with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. Or maybe they're going to have some unique content, whether it's video, photographs, artwork, literature, writing, whatever it is. It might be something unique that they want to protect, and we can copyright it with the Library of Congress. So then we look at maybe they're going to grow and they're going to hire some employees, and we're going to think about having their own employment contracts with their own non-competes. Or maybe they're going to use independent contractors instead, and we can have a whole discussion about the difference between independent contractor and employee, and we're going to maybe have an independent contractor agreement. We can't have a non-compete traditionally, although Florida will allow it. But more likely we'll have a non-interference or a non-circumvention or a confidentiality clause in there, okay? And then eventually what their real dream is, and they will ride out with it, is they want to raise money. In fact, they're going to need to raise money now, and then the dream is they grow it to a certain sustainable size, and then they go for another funding, right, where they're going to get even more money to take it maybe nationwide, have some commercials on television, all that costs money, have a professional full-time staff, running out of a real office, all that costs money. And so what we're talking about now is having investor contracts. And one of the guys says, instead of investor contracts, what I think we want to do is have lenders, so creditors, who will then have convertible notes. So that's a contract. It says, I'm going to lend you $1,000, and within a year or after a year, whatever terms we put in there, if I change my mind, I'll say, hey, instead of paying me back that $1,000, I want 5% of your company. Now, all these things need to be agreed in advance, right? And the numbers I just made up in my mind, right? If it's $1,000 for 5%, so 1,000 divided by 0.05, that means I'm valuing the company at $20,000. I mean, that's a bad example, but you get what I'm saying. Hopefully we add a couple more zeros to that valuation. So then the guy looks at me and he says, well, do I need to do all this right now? And I said, no, of course not. Listen, you know how many startups start with a handshake between the partners? A handshake with the first couple employees or independent contractors? Sure, we're going to need some documents for the website, but do we really need to register a trademark today? No. Do we really need to have a private placement memorandum, which, by the way, is a completely optional document that protects you for when your investors, years down the road, want their money back or they threaten to sue you? You can pull out this 150-page contract that your lawyer put together that says, disclaimer, 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 which is another way of saying, I'm not making any promises, I'm not making any promises, I'm not making any promises. There's a whole area of law when you make promises, it's called fraudulent inducement, right? I'm going to promise you you're going to make money, you're going to give me money, and then 2 years later you're not making any money, you're going to sue me for fraudulent inducement. Anyways, The moral of the story is all these things are optional. These are things we can grow into as time passes. A lot of times I say, listen, go on the internet. There's free contracts. Later on, once you got something worth protecting, call a lawyer like me and we'll upgrade you to something more professional. But it's okay to start off with something basic, when you don't have the money. But being with you for the journey, this is Eric Rodebois from EPGD Attorneys at Law, EPGD Land, and I'll hopefully talk to you soon. Bye.